Another thing that we had mentioned, and that you kind of touched on too, Becky, so it was kind of natural, is just that myth of professionalism, and the idea that if you speak up, then you're not professional, or that you've lost your composure, but really you're just correcting like an injustice, right?
Hmm.
Um, how are you folks feeling about that statement?
I feel like it kind of comes back to what you said earlier when you confronted your boss. There's this idea that you have to be performative in a certain way. And I mean, to be honest, emotion in the workplace is often seen as a negative rather than a positive, when it really should be a positive, because I found that more empathetic and more personal workspaces were the more healthier workspaces. I'm very fortunate now to be in a very healthy workspace where like they encourage women. They encourage specifically Black and Indigenous women to become historians, new immigrants to get their master's degrees. Like they're paying for those initiatives and things like that. But it's all started based on conversations and feedback and a lot of anonymous like quizzes and things like that. So people didn't feel outed or targeted by other people within the workspace. They could just kind of like say what they needed to say. Um, so I feel as though sometimes when we get into, saying how we feel or confronting something, we always run that risk of not appearing professional. But like sometimes we have to unpack what the professional standard is and like who it's really meant for. And if it's not really meant for us, then like why are we trying to adhere to it? So that was just kind of like what I was thinking about during that.
I personally feel like, I feel like my office still has a long way to go in order to kind of reach the goals that we should be reaching as far as a small business goes, and just reaching out to those resources and trying to get the education to happen, and like calling everybody in, to kind of do that. I definitely feel like there's a lot of we benefit a lot from some of the institutionalized racism and stuff that happens in the industry that we work in. Just the whole idea of like, oh, I'd rather speak to somebody North American than East Indian, or these people don't know much about IT because they are in this realm or whatever, and they don't really know how the whole system works. And it's like, well, no, that whole system, that system is not, like a computer is just zeros and ones. It's not, oh, certain people can't figure out computers, others can. It's like, no, that's not true, and so we do have a long ways to go, I think, to properly recognize that and to be operating in that field. And I think what I'm going to do is, after this conversation, is get in touch with my HR representative and have a conversation with her about what we can do going forward to kind of bring that up a little bit more, because it's definitely been something that's been on my mind for a long time. But as Jeanette kind of said too, it's like, sometimes it takes years before you finally realize, wait a sec, all this is actually happening, like when you're in the thick of it and you're just worried about what your next check is going to be, and like, making sure that the house is going and the lights are on and all that kind of stuff, you miss a lot, so yeah, that's my thoughts.
Um, I've Storm, like everything you said, like that really, I felt summed it up really well. One thing that I was thinking about when you were talking is, so right now the boss I have is very receptive. Like since the day I started here, even in my interview, I was honest about what I wanted, and that was a workplace that was committed to diversity and lifting up voices, and you know I've always said what it was that I wanted, and from day one, I've received that support from him, which has been great. But I also was thinking about how I've had bosses in the past, or I still know people that kind of goes back to your question, Cece, about like, I think sometimes like you develop love for the people in your workplace. I often do. I might not like everybody, but I think I see them more than I see my family, because I work long hours, and I've grown to love them. and it is hard sometimes to have those conversations, like sometimes that, not quite sure how to put it, but sometimes that can make things more difficult too. I think that those two things are true at the same time, which is that you love somebody and they're also doing something that you hate, which is being racist. So I find that I think Storm just said it. She summed up everything. Like, you summed up everything. So I don't have too much to add, but that one little thing kind of is like another piece of the puzzle for me that I struggle with sometimes.
Yeah, like I'd like to just add to, I don't think professionalism should be a term or an expectation or even a standard used to sort of fit people into a box. And I think that in today's sort of work culture, that term is kind of used a lot to say, we expect you to look this certain way, we expect you to embrace this culture, or here comes like the micromanagers that won't even give you the freedom to do anything outside of what you were assigned. I think in the end, it is very oppressing and it's less productive, because now those individuals have to consciously be spending time and energy on how to fit in. And that's not, it's just like very detrimental to somebody's mental health to have to think about that all of the time, rather than actually focusing on tasks, focusing on ways that they can sort of develop themselves and improve in that sense. So like I've worked in places where it's like, oh, if you wear jeans and it's not on a certain day of the week, I think it was Thursdays at that particular place, then you're a little bit eccentric. You're not sort of fitting into the norms. Or like, this is my hair, I can't really do anything with this. And I've actually had one boss one time that told me that, hey, like I looked really unkept just by putting my hair out like this. And yeah, what do you say in those situations? And I remember one time, I think this was kind of like on my last straw at the workplace. And she kind of brought up basically an outfit that I was wearing, and maybe I should do this and that and the next, basically to sort of conform a little bit better to the work culture in that environment. And that was a time that I don't want to say I snapped, but I went off and I broke down, and I was like, I think that you're being really unfair and you're not allowing me to basically flourish in this environment, because I'm constantly focused on the way I look or the way that I'm appearing, or even I want to say not my work ethic, but more so the flow of that work and how much I can actually, what my output is like, like that all takes a toll. And in the end, it's like, that's not productive and that's not the environment that I need to be successful in my profession. So I really hope that more workplaces are a little bit more mindful when they do set these standards. And I think that they just need to be a little bit more tolerant as to other people's cultural background and those sort of, I guess, the workflows or work ethics that they're used to. They can sort of kind of work with them with it, not so sort of stuck a person in a box and then expect them to sort of either sink or swim.